Hello and welcome to the fifth installment of my grading of all of the expansion cards in Terraforming Mars. This is the fourth episode on Venus Next. As always, if you want insight into the grading system, check out the description or click on the link in the top right hand corner to get to the first video, where I explain it all. If you want to know how I go about ranking the expansion cards compared to the base game cards, check out the first video of rating expansion cards, which is linked in the description. But let's get started. I think you can call this episode cards that have huge potential but are on average not that great, because at least 3 of the 5 cards fit this description perfectly. Number 1 is Freyja Biodomes. This is one of the strongest Venus payoffs in the game. It can score close to 5 points with the right setup, meaning if you have a Venus animal, so either Stratbirds or Venusian animals, and you also have Ecozone and Decomposers down. It can also be made cheaper by Venus Way Station, it can combo with viral enhancers, the plant tag can be useful for NRA or insects, Vitor gets a rebate from it, and it helps with winning Venophile. So this card can be one of the absolute best point scorers in the game. But it can also be either unplayable, that is if you never reach 10% Venus, it can score just 2 flat points if you don't have a card to put the animals or microbes on, or it can land anywhere in between these scenarios I just outlined. But to make it clear, if you can reach this card's requirement, have some power left over and just a bit of combo potential, maybe Venusian insects for example, then this card is pretty good. But we're all looking for these scenarios where it's more than that, where it's completely insane. But where does this put Freyja Biodomes overall? In my opinion, in B tier. We find no hidden potential in the next card. I placed GHG Import from Venus in my top 5 worst Venus Next cards together with Orbital Reflectors, and I stand by that. It's an overpriced piece of junk, and the two aspects of this card just don't work together. On the one hand, it grants Heat Prot, usually helping with a fast game, and on the other hand, it grants a Venus Bump, something that you'd like to get if you're going for an engine game plan. As I said, I also feel like it's overpriced, compared to Mohole Area. That card grants 4 Heat Prot, which allows you to increase the temperature every 2 gens instead of 3, and is significantly cheaper, also due to being able to pick up a placement bonus. The only scenario where I feel this card makes sense is if you're playing Helion, want to go for a long game, and maybe have some combo potential down like optimal air braking. Because in that scenario the card is a bit cheaper, and you can use both aspects of it for an engine. But in all other scenarios I would avoid this card. F tier for me. Next up, we have one of the most straightforward cards of this expansion. Giant Solar Shade. It costs 27 plus 3 MC and grants 3 Venus bumps. Let's compare it to Water to Venus. That card costs 9 plus 3 MC, meaning playing it 3 times to get the effect of GSS would cost you 36 MC. That means you get a 6 MC discount on GSS. There are other small factors at play. Water to Venus is a space event, so it triggers Media Group, Optimal and IC, while GSS has a Venus tag, which has its own combo potential and also helps with Venophile. All in all, GSS is a useful card in a few scenarios. Either you just want an expensive titanium dump to score some points in the late game, keep in mind the conversion rate of MC to points is not the best just compared to ICS, but if you have nothing else or you have a lot of discounts it can still be fine. Also, if you can play this to get a TR on the Venus track, it really is a good point card. But then, the more important reason to play this card, and the best case scenario overall, is if you want to unlock a higher impact Venus card like Stratbirds or Venusian animals. No other card grants you that many Venus bumps that quickly. But GSS has one big problem. There's absolutely no reason to play this if you're going for a rush. That, together with the fact that it doesn't grant particularly great value in its base case, leads me to believe that it should land in C tier. But we will get back to the cards that have huge potential but are on average not that great with Gyropolis. There are few cards that can swing Banker as hard as this one. I've seen 20 MC prot Gyropolis plays, and I don't think any other card can come close to that realistically. Together with the fact that the card itself can also score points by placing a city, it really can be one of the best late game point dumps if Banker is in play. But it can also just be an underwhelming city card that costs a shit ton of money due to the 2 power prot it requires. Usually both engine and rush players enjoy a city or 2 in the late game, Rush players only if they can afford it and end the game fast, obviously. But a lot of Earth and Venus techs are once again the sign of an engine player. So Gyropolis really is only playable in that strategy. So I'd say Gyropolis is a situational, one-sided card that can absolutely pop off in the right scenario, but more often than not is underwhelming and incredibly expensive. C tier for me. And next up we get to Hydrogen to Venus. You should probably compare this to Air Scrapping Expedition, which it is incredibly similar to. If we ignore the floaters for now, Hydrogen to Venus costs 2 MC less and has a space tag instead of a Venus tag. That makes it much easier to play for once. You pay less, can use titanium on it, trigger space discounts and optimal aerobraking. And what do you miss out for? Venus Way Station and dirigibles. Wow. Next up, the floater situation. I called Air Scrapping Expedition a super situational card because of the floaters only being useful if you have a good floater card to go with it. Same is of course true with Hydrogen to Venus. You might say it's even more situational due to the floaters relying on Jovian tags played, but both of these cards are engine cards at heart. You only want to increase Venus if you're going for a long game, and you certainly don't want any floaters if you're going for a rush either. And if you're already going for an engine, chances are you'll have some Jovian tags. A lot of them in the late game maybe. Also, with some Jovians, you'll likely have some titanium prot too. And then Hydrogen to Venus can be a nasty point card. With 2 Jovians, it scores 2 points in total if you've got floating HEPs, and realistically is already as good as Air Scrapping Expedition, as the extra floater is compensated by the higher cost of that card. With more Jovians, this card becomes a really good deal. Obviously, it's not as good for Hoverlord or floater cards that want to use up their floaters, since then you'll need to play it early. But the much higher point ceiling of the card and the strategy that most likely want to play these 2 cards leads me to believe that Hydrogen to Venus should be placed 1 tier higher than Air Scrapping Expedition, in C tier. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know in the comments whether you agree with my ratings, or if not, how you would have rated these cards differently. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. And lastly, please check out my Twitch and my Twitter. See you in the next video.